In 2017, I met Lily during my sophomore year at a small college in Pennsylvania. She had this way of lighting up a room, always laughing, always making people feel like they mattered. I wasn't immune. We started hanging out, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. By 2021, we were serious enough that I was already planning to propose. I worked long shifts at a warehouse, saving every penny I could. The plan was to pop the question during Christmas at her parents' place, a cozy house just outside town. Lily's family had their quirks. Her dad, George, was a quiet, kind man who seemed like he'd rather be fishing than dealing with anything remotely stressful. Her little sister, Claire, was a sweetheart, a bit shy, but always kind to me. And then there was her mom, Donna. Donna wasn't just hard to please. She seemed to enjoy making people squirm. No matter how polite or accommodating I tried to be, she'd find something to criticize. She'd make comments about how I lacked direction, or how Lily needed someone who could provide a better future. Every snide remark felt like a jab, but Lily would brush it off with a laugh, saying, "That's just how she is. Don't take it personally." So, I tried to grin and bear it for Lily's sake. By Christmas, I was ready. I'd saved enough to buy Lily a modest but beautiful ring. I'd rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd get down on one knee in front of the tree with her family watching. I even spent way more than I should have on gifts for her family, hoping it might soften Donna up. I got Claire a tablet because her old laptop was barely holding on, and she needed it for her classes. For George, a nice set of grilling tools, since he was always talking about upgrading his backyard setup. Even Donna got an expensive cashmere scarf that made me wince when I saw the price tag. But I figured if anything could crack that icy exterior, it might be that. Lily was working a hospital shift that day, so I arrived first and handed out the gifts. Claire's face lit up when she opened the tablet, and she threw her arms around me. "This is amazing. Thank you so much," she said, tearing up. George gave me a hearty pat on the back and said, "This is perfect. Thanks, son." Donna. Well, Donna raised an eyebrow when she unwrapped the scarf and said, "This must have cost you a fortune." That was her version of a thank you, I guess. For a moment, I thought maybe I was finally breaking through. But then I noticed Claire acting a little off. She kept glancing at me, her eyes darting toward George like she was debating something. After a while, she asked me to step into her room for a second. George followed, looking confused. Inside, Claire closed the door and immediately started crying. I froze, not knowing what to do. "Claire, what's wrong?" I asked. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me something. It took me a second to realize it was a positive pregnancy test. My heart dropped. "It's Lily's," she said, her voice trembling. "I found it a few weeks ago." The room started spinning. I tried to speak, but my throat felt tight. "She's pregnant?" I finally managed. Claire nodded, then blurted out the rest. "She's been seeing someone else since earlier this year. Mom introduced them." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What?" Claire was sobbing now, guilt all over her face. She begged me not to say anything. She said she needed time to figure things out. "But you're a good guy, and I couldn't keep it from you." George put a hand on my shoulder, his face a mix of anger and sympathy. "I'm sorry, son. You didn't deserve this. If you want to leave, I understand." I nodded numbly, still trying to process everything. I muttered a thank you to Claire for telling me, shook George's hand, and walked out. As I passed Donna in the living room, she sat there sipping wine, looking completely unfazed. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I didn't. The drive home was a blur. By the time I got back to my apartment, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, my mind racing. The ring I'd saved for was sitting in a box on the coffee table, mocking me. I called my mom, not knowing what else to do. As soon as I told her, she was livid. "You're better off without her," she said firmly. I never liked the sound of that family anyway. My sister, Beth, overheard and chimed in, "Tell me where she is. I'll take care of it." I told them to let it go. I didn't want revenge or drama. All I wanted was to move on, but that felt impossible. That night, Lily started texting me. First, it was, "Hey, can we talk?" Then it was, "Please, I can explain. By midnight, she'd left me half a dozen voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. I didn't answer. The next morning, I changed my number, deleted my social media, and resolved to erase her from my life. It wasn't just about avoiding her. It was about protecting myself from the humiliation, the betrayal, and the anger that threatened to swallow me whole. For the next few weeks, I kept my head down and tried to focus on rebuilding. But every night, as I lay in bed, the same questions ran through my mind. How did I not see this coming? Was I blind, or just stupid? And most of all, what did I ever do to deserve this? The weeks after I cut Lily out of my life were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. Every morning, I woke up with this knot in my stomach, the kind that reminds you something's wrong before your brain even catches up. I kept replaying everything over and over, what I missed, what I could have done differently, and why it all went so horribly wrong. I threw myself into work, picking up as many extra shifts as I could. Staying busy helped, but it didn't stop the thoughts from creeping in during the quiet moments. My mom and Beth checked on me constantly. Beth, as blunt as ever, kept saying things like, "She's trash, and you dodged a bullet." My mom, on the other hand, was the nurturing type. She'd drop off food at my apartment, always with a kind word or two to remind me I deserved better. For a while, it felt like survival mode. Get up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. I tried to distract myself with other things. I joined a local basketball league, reconnected with some old friends, and even attempted to cook for myself. The cooking was a disaster. I burned rice of all things, but it made me laugh at myself for the first time in weeks. Small wins, I guess. One afternoon, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated but answered anyway. "Michael, it's Claire." I hadn't expected to hear from her, and for a second, I wasn't sure what to say. Hey, what's up?" "I just wanted to check on you," she said softly. "I've been feeling awful about everything. I should have told you sooner." "It's not your fault, Claire," I said, meaning it. "You did the right thing by telling me it all. I appreciate that." She sighed, clearly relieved. "Thanks. Things have been tense here. Mom's furious that I told you. Lily won't stop crying, saying she messed everything up. Hearing that should have satisfied me, but it didn't. Instead, it just made me feel hollow." "She did mess everything up," I said flatly. "That's not on me." "I know," Claire said quickly. "I just thought you should know that, well, she's struggling. I think she really regrets what she did." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't interested in her regret. "Claire, I'm sorry things are tough for you, but I can't do anything about it. Lily made her choices. I've made mine." Claire sounded like she wanted to say more, but she didn't push. "I get it. I just wanted to apologize again. You didn't deserve any of this." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a while, staring out the window. Claire's words lingered in my head, but they didn't change anything. A few months later, I got another call, this time from a mutual friend. We hadn't spoken much since the breakup, so I almost didn't answer. "Hey man," he said. "Just thought you should know, Lily's guy? The one she cheated with? He bailed." I froze. "What do you mean, he bailed?" "Apparently, he found out he's the father and freaked out. Left her high and dry. She's a single mom now, trying to figure it out on her own." I didn't know what to feel. Satisfaction? Sympathy? Indifference? In the end, all I managed was, "Wow." "Yeah," he said, "it's messy. She's been asking around, trying to find someone to help her out. Just thought you'd want to know." "Thanks for the heads up," I said, and that was the end of the call. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the thought of Lily raising that kid alone. Part of me felt like she was getting what she deserved, consequences for her actions. But another part of me, one I didn't want to admit existed, felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name. That night, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again. Another unfamiliar number. I didn't even hesitate this time. I hit decline and blocked it immediately. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Lily. The subject line read, "Please, just hear me out." I didn't open it. I couldn't. The days turned into weeks, and the messages kept coming. Emails, texts from random numbers, even a voicemail or two. Every time, it was the same, I'm sorry, I need to talk to you. Or please, for the baby's sake. I ignored them all. One day, while I was grabbing lunch with my mom and Beth, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Across the restaurant, Lily was sitting at a table with Donna. Lily looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days, while Donna looked as composed as ever. Beth noticed them too and muttered, "You want me to go over there? I'll tell them to leave." I shook my head. "No. Let's just finish our meal and go." As we stood to leave, Lily spotted me. Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to say something, but I walked past her without a word. I could feel her gaze on my back as I left, but I didn't turn around. Back in the car, Beth asked, "Does it bother you, seeing her like that?" I thought about it for a moment. "It doesn't bother me," I said slowly, "but it doesn't make me feel good either." Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing, Michael. Keep moving forward." I nodded, knowing she was right. But a part of me wondered if I'd ever stop feeling that tiny flicker of doubt. A couple of weeks after seeing Lily at the restaurant, I started to think maybe the storm was finally over. The emails had slowed down, and the random calls from blocked numbers stopped entirely. I was beginning to feel like I could finally breathe again. Emily and I were spending more time together, and I found myself genuinely happy for the first time in what felt like forever. Then, one evening, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I looked through the peephole, my stomach sank. It was Donna. I opened the door just enough to speak, keeping my hand on the edge. "What are you doing here?" Donna stood there, arms crossed and lips pressed in a tight line. She was dressed in one of those expensive suits she always wore, the kind that screamed, "I'm better than you." "We need to talk," she said sharply, like she was ordering me around. "No, we don't," I replied. "Whatever this is, I don't want to hear it." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't keep ignoring us, Michael. This is about responsibility." I let out a humorless laugh. Responsibility? For what? For a child that isn't mine? For a mess I didn't create? "You're out of your mind, Donna." She didn't flinch. If anything, my response seemed to fuel her determination. "You were practically part of this family. Lily trusted you. You can't just walk away because things got difficult." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "Difficult? Your daughter lied, cheated, and got pregnant by someone else. That's not difficult, Donna. That's betrayal. And I'm not going to clean up her mess because you think I owe her something." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "That baby needs a father. And whether you like it or not, you're the best chance he has." I stepped back, shaking my head in disbelief. "You seriously think you can guilt me into this? Donna, you've been against me since the day I met Lily. You didn't want me to be part of your family then, and I sure as hell don't want to be part of it now." Her expression darkened, and for a moment, I thought she might slap me. But instead, she said, "You're going to regret this, Michael. Mark my words." "Goodbye, Donna," I said firmly, and I shut the door in her face. That night, I couldn't shake the anger bubbling under my skin. Donna's audacity was almost impressive, but it wasn't just her that bothered me. It was the fact that she thought I was weak enough to cave to her demands. That after everything, she still believed she could manipulate me. The next day, I told Emily about what happened. She listened quietly, her brow furrowing as I recounted the conversation. "She's unhinged," Emily said finally. "And honestly, the fact that she came to your door like that is borderline harassment." "I know," I said, rubbing the back of my neck, "but I don't think she'll stop until she gets what she wants." Emily reached across the table and took my hand. "Then don't give her the satisfaction. You've done the hard part, walking away. Don't let her drag you back in." Her words stuck with me, and for a while, I thought I was ready to move on again. But Donna wasn't done yet. A week later, she showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of a shift when my manager came to find me, her expression puzzled. "Michael, there's a woman out front asking for you. She says it's urgent." I sighed, already knowing who it was. "I'll handle it," I said, wiping my hands on my work pants before heading to the front. Sure enough, there was Donna, standing in the middle of the lobby like she owned the place. "You've been ignoring my calls," she said as soon as she saw me. I crossed my arms. "Because there's nothing to talk about. You're wasting your time." She raised her voice, loud enough that a couple of my coworkers glanced over. You can't keep running from this, Michael. Everyone will know the truth about what kind of man you really are. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Go ahead, I said, my tone icy. Tell them how your daughter cheated on me, lied about her pregnancy, and now you're trying to guilt me into raising her child. Let's see how much sympathy you get. Her face turned red, and for a moment, I thought she might actually explode. You're a coward, she spat. No decent woman will ever want someone like you. Before I could respond, security arrived. My manager must have called them while I was walking up. They escorted Donna out, ignoring her protests as I walked back to my station. Later that evening, I got a text from Claire. She apologized again, saying Tim was furious with Donna and that things at home were falling apart. She's out of control, Claire wrote. Dad's talking about separating. I don't blame him. I stared at the message for a while before replying. I'm sorry you're going through this. You don't deserve it. She didn't respond after that, and I was left wondering if their family would ever recover from the chaos Donna created. As for me, I felt strangely calm. Every time Donna or Lily tried to pull me back into their drama, it only reinforced one thing. I made the right choice. Their problems weren't mine to solve, and I wasn't going to let them ruin the life I was finally rebuilding. A few weeks passed after Donna's outburst at my workplace, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally heard the last of her. Claire sent me a couple of texts apologizing again, and Tim even called me once to say he was embarrassed by how far things had gone. He sounded defeated, like someone who had been fighting a battle he knew he couldn't win. I told him it wasn't his fault and left it at that. Life started to settle back into a rhythm. I focused on work, spent more time with Emily, and even joined her on a few hikes, which was way out of my comfort zone but surprisingly fun. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally moving forward. Then one afternoon, while Emily and I were grabbing lunch at a small cafe, I spotted Lily sitting alone at a table by the window. She looked different. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and she wore an oversized hoodie that made her seem smaller than I remembered. There was a stroller parked next to her, and she was absently rocking it while staring at her phone. Emily noticed her before I could say anything. Isn't that her? She asked softly. Yeah, I said, my stomach tightening. Do you want to leave? I shook my head. No, let's just eat. She hasn't seen us. But of course, that didn't last long. As we waited for our food, Lily glanced up and froze when her eyes met mine. For a second, she looked like she might get up and walk over, but instead, she quickly looked away and busied herself with the stroller. Emily leaned closer, her voice low. She's not coming over. Relax. I'm fine, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. We finished our meal without incident, but as we were leaving, I felt a hand on my arm. I turned to see Lily standing there, holding her phone and looking hesitant. Michael, she said softly, glancing nervously at Emily. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Emily gave me a questioning look, but I nodded. Go wait in the car, I told her. Lily seemed relieved when Emily walked away, but I wasn't planning on giving her much of my time. What do you want, Lily? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of her phone tightly. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You've already said that, I replied. What else is there to say? Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down. I don't know. I feel like I ruined everything, and I don't know how to fix it. I sighed, crossing my arms. You can't fix it, Lily. What's done is done. You made your choices, and I've moved on. I know, she said quickly, her voice cracking. I know you have, but I can't stop thinking about what I lost. About how badly I screwed up. That's not my problem, I said firmly. You need to figure this out for yourself, Lily. I can't do it for you. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I miss you, Michael. I miss how things were before I messed everything up. Her words hit me harder than I wanted to admit, but I didn't let it show. Lily, I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not angry anymore, but that doesn't mean I want to go back. You need to move on. She nodded again, looking like she wanted to say more, but instead, she just whispered, I'm sorry. and walked away. When I got to the car, Emily was waiting patiently. "How'd it go?" she asked. I shrugged. She apologized. Again. Emily didn't press, and I was grateful for that. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. Not because I regretted anything, but because it reminded me of how far I'd come. A year ago, her tears would have broken me. I would have done anything to make things right. Now, all I felt was closure. But just as I was starting to feel at peace, Donna reared her head again. One evening, Tim called me, his voice tense. "Michael, I wanted to warn you," he said. "Donna's been talking about showing up at your place again. She's angry that Lily talked to you without her knowing." "Are you serious?" I asked, groaning. "I'm sorry," he said. "I've been trying to keep her in check, but she's—" "Donna, I thought you should know." "Thanks for the heads up," I said. Sure enough, a few days later, Donna showed up at my apartment. This time, I didn't even open the door. When she started banging and shouting, I called the building manager, who promptly had her escorted out. After that, I blocked every number I could think of, and even changed my locks, just in case. Donna's persistence was exhausting, but I refused to let her win. Emily helped me see the bright side. "If she's this desperate, it means she's losing control," she said. "People like Donna can't stand not being in charge." She was right. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one in control. After the building manager had Donna escorted off the property, I thought I'd finally seen the last of her. That was wishful thinking. If Donna was good at one thing, it was not knowing when to quit. A few days later, I got a call from an old friend I hadn't talked to in a while. He sounded uncomfortable, and I could tell something was bothering him. "Hey man," he started. "I didn't know if I should call, but Donna reached out to me. She's asking people about you, trying to dig up dirt or something." I sighed, more annoyed than surprised. "What is she even hoping to find?" "She's saying you abandoned Lily and her kid, claiming you're some deadbeat who ran off when things got hard," he said hesitantly. "I know it's not true, but I thought you should know what she's saying." I let out a bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. Thanks for letting me know. If anyone else asks, you can tell them the truth, or not. I honestly don't care." "Got it," he said. "Just hang in there, man. People know who you really are." I appreciated the support, but it was exhausting knowing Donna was still out there, spinning her version of events. What made it worse was that Lily wasn't stopping her. Maybe she couldn't, but part of me thought she didn't want to. The next time I heard from Tim, he confirmed my suspicions. "She's pushing Lily to go to court," he said. "For what?" I asked, completely dumbfounded. "She's talking about some kind of emotional damages, like you led Lily on or abandoned her in a time of need," he explained, his voice heavy with embarrassment. "It's ridiculous. I told her it's a waste of time, but you know how she is." "Yeah, I do," I muttered. "Let her try. She has no case." Tim sighed. "I'm sorry, Michael. She's making a fool of herself and dragging everyone else down with her." "Don't apologize," I said. "It's not your fault. Just keep me posted if she tries anything else." "Will do," he promised. For the next couple of weeks, things were eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I started to let my guard down, thinking maybe Donna had finally realized how futile her efforts were. Then one evening, Emily and I were out at a small Italian restaurant downtown. It was one of those cozy places with dim lighting and old-school charm, the kind of place that made everything feel a little more special. We just finished our meal when I heard a familiar voice. "Michael." I looked up and saw Lily standing a few feet away, holding her son on her hip. She looked as tired as ever, but her eyes were wide with what I could only describe as panic. Emily stiffened beside me, glancing between us. I put a hand on hers to calm her down. "Stay here," I said softly, before standing to face Lily. "What is it, Lily?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking. "Please." Emily stood up. "Michael doesn't owe you anything," she said sharply. "It's okay," I said, holding up a hand. "I'll handle this." Emily gave me a skeptical look, but sat back down. Lily looked like she was about to cry. "I don't know what else to do," she said. "I'm drowning here. My mom is making everything worse, and I don't have anyone else to turn to. That's not my problem, Lily, I said firmly. You've got family. You've got options. Figure it out. Her face crumpled, and she hugged her son closer. I know I hurt you, she said. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you, for his sake. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words but refusing to let them sink in. Lily, I'm not his father. That's on you and the guy you chose. It's not my job to clean up your mess. Her tears spilled over, but I didn't waver. Please, Michael. Can we try to start over? As friends. Maybe? I don't know what else to say. I shook my head. There's nothing to start over. I've moved on. You should too. For a moment, she just stood there, crying silently. Then she whispered, I'm sorry, and walked away. When I sat back down, Emily looked at me, her expression a mix of anger and concern. Are you okay? Yeah, I said, though my voice felt heavier than I wanted it to. That was a lot, she said carefully. It was, I agreed, taking a sip of water. But it's over now. Still, as we left the restaurant, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. I didn't regret what I said, but I also didn't feel the closure I'd been hoping for. Maybe that's the thing about messy situations like this. You don't always get a clean break. The next morning, Tim called me again. Donna's furious, he said, almost laughing. Lily told her what happened at the restaurant, and now she's ranting about how ungrateful you are. Of course she is, I said, rolling my eyes. At this point, I'm not even surprised. Tim sighed. I don't know what's going to happen with her. She's pushing everyone away, including me and Claire. I think I'm finally done. Done? Yeah, he said quietly. I've been thinking about filing for divorce. She's poisoned everything in her path, and I'm tired of pretending it's going to get better. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, Tim. You don't deserve that. Neither do you, he said. But you're handling it better than I am. After we hung up, I couldn't stop thinking about his words. Donna's toxicity wasn't just affecting me. It was tearing apart her family too. And for what? Control? Pride? Whatever it was, I wanted no part of it. By the end of the day, I knew one thing for sure. Walking away from all of them was the best decision I'd ever made. In the weeks following the restaurant incident, I felt an odd sense of finality creeping in. Lily hadn't reached out again, and Donna, for all her dramatics, had gone silent. Maybe Tim was right. Maybe she had finally pushed everyone too far, even her own family. Tim called me one last time not long after our previous conversation. His voice was calmer, steadier, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I thought you'd want to know, he said. I filed for divorce. I wasn't surprised, but it still felt heavy. How's Claire taking it? She's relieved, honestly, he said. We both are. Living with Donna has been exhausting. I should have done this years ago. I didn't know what to say. I felt for him, but at the same time, I was glad he was finally doing what was right for himself and Claire. What about Lily? I asked cautiously. Tim sighed. She's still struggling. I don't think she's talking to Mom anymore, though. After what happened at the restaurant, I think she's starting to realize how much damage Donna caused. That's probably for the best, I said. It is, he agreed. And Michael, thanks for being patient with all of this. I know it wasn't easy. You don't have to thank me, I said. You were one of the few people in that family who treated me with respect. I appreciate that. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up feeling a strange mix of emotions. Tim's family was falling apart, but in some ways, it felt like things were finally moving in the right direction. For him, for Claire, and even for Lily. As for me, life was finally starting to feel normal again. Emily and I were spending more time together, and our relationship was growing stronger. She had been my rock through everything, always knowing when to push me and when to give me space. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, she turned to me and said, "You seem lighter these days, like a weight's been lifted." I thought about it for a moment, then nodded. I think it has. I finally feel free. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. Good. You deserve that. That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened over the past year. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the chaos. It had all been so overwhelming at the time. But now, looking back, I realized it had taught me something important. I'd spent so much of my life trying to please people who didn't value me, bending over backward to prove I was good enough. And for what? To be left with a ring on the coffee table and a shattered sense of trust? But I'd survived. I'd moved on. And in doing so, I'd learned how to set boundaries, how to stand up for myself, and how to let go of people who didn't deserve a place in my life. The next morning, I got an email from Lily. The subject line simply said, "Thank you." I debated opening it, but decided against it. I didn't need her gratitude or her closure. I had already given myself both. Instead, I deleted the email and went about my day, knowing that for the first time in a long time, I was truly free from the weight of my past.